I still believe that there's a role for all of us to play in the future of the sport. And part of that for us is bringing world-class competition to our mountain and inspiring the next generation of skiers. And there's no doubt that you do that when you host an event like this.
Welcome to the Storm. I'm your host, Stuart Winchester, revisiting an American icon today, where everything seems to be happening all at once. Before we get to Sun Valley, please check out the video version of this episode on stormskiing.com or on YouTube at Storm Ski Journal. You can also follow the Storm at that same handle at Storm Ski Journal on X and Instagram. And you can rep the Storm by picking up some merch at the Storm store at stormskiing.myshopify.com. And of course, the very best way to support the Storm's mission of independent ski journalism is to upgrade to the paid tier of the Storm Skiing Journal and podcast, which will get you access to 100% of the Storm's written content, past and present. The podcast, I'll have you know, is just a small part of the Storm. All right, quick note from my partner before we get into Sun Valley. Can you imagine a future where 99% of your mountain products are booked online? Well, Aspenware can help you do that. Aspenware is the leading e-commerce solution purpose-built for the ski industry. They create customized e-commerce platforms that ensure guests spend more time doing what they love and less time standing in lines. Utilizing the team's extensive industry experience, Aspenware strives to make the resort booking process seamless with a mobile-friendly, simplified sales process that anticipates the needs of customers at every part of their journey. Based in Denver, Colorado, Aspenware stands apart as an innovator. They understand the value that software and technology bring to a mountain resort, and they strive to create solutions so good they seem invisible. Visit aspenware.com to learn more. All right, let's get into episode 207 of the Storm Skiing Podcast. Pete Sonntag, Chief Operating Officer and General Manager of Sun Valley, Idaho. My guest today has been General Manager of Sun Valley, Idaho since 2021. And recently added the title of the resort's Chief Operating Officer. The site of the world's first chairlift and recent host of the Steffel World Cup Finals, Sun Valley is one of the most iconic ski areas in North America. The complex features two ski areas, 3,400 vertical foot Bald Mountain, which is served by a gondola and 10 chairlifts, including 3 high-speed lifts that have been built in the past 2 years. One of which, Challenger, is the tallest chairlift by vertical rise in North America. Dollar Mountain, at 628 vertical feet, is an important beginner and park center for the Sun Valley community. Prior to taking the top job at Sun Valley, he held several posts at Vail Resorts, overseeing the company's Western Resort region and working various roles at Heavenly, Vail Mountain, Beaver Creek, Keystone, and Whistler. He also spent time at Copper Mountain and West Mountain in New York. He is a good friend of the Storm and making his second appearance on the Storm Skiing Podcast. Pete Sonntag is my guest. Pete, I am really sorry I missed you when I was out in Sun Valley last month, but I had a great time and I cannot wait to talk to you about everything I saw out there. How you doing in Idaho today, Pete?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Stuart. And yeah, sorry I missed you as well, but I'm always here, ready to take a run.
God, those World Cup preparations were going strong when I was out there, and normally I'd start with that. But I want to ask you real quick about Carol Holding, who had purchased Sun Valley with her husband Earl in 1977. She passed away in December at age 95. What can you tell us, Pete, about the Holdings legacy and what they were able to build as Sun Valley in their nearly 50-year tenure?
Yeah, I've felt this from the day I arrived of just what a privilege it was to be part of something so unique and special in the ski industry, where, the commitment to investment was clear, the commitment to the employees was clear, and what that led to in terms of a guest experience. It has such a unique feel and vibe here that I loved from day one, and it all starts it started with Earl and Carol, and after Earl's passing, it was Carol. And I just, I feel like I was really sad when she passed, and I have to just kind of, look at it and say I'm grateful for the time that I had with her, because she is somebody who was really involved in the business, right, literally right up until the very end. And as a matter of fact, I can say like it was Thanksgiving week. We would be in regular contact. I would typically send her an update every Saturday on kind of how the week has been going. And so after Thanksgiving, she reached out, she called, and she wanted to know why the discrepancy year over year in skier visits.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, if for somebody who's 95 and
Yeah.
doesn't have to do this, she was so engaged, and I walked her through it, and she thanked me, and she would always finish with, "Hey, make sure you're spending time with your family. It's the most important thing." And man, she's just such an awesome and inspirational lady. And like I said, I miss her, but I'm so glad I had the time I had with her.
It sounds like you had a business relationship with her, but also a personal relationship. And your colleague, Davey Ratchford, who leads Sister Resort Snow Basin, told a really moving story on this podcast a couple years back about his first meeting with Mrs. Holding and how much it was apparent that she cared about the guests and the experience in Snow Basin. Just curious if you can tell us any more about your relationship with her or any anecdotes that you might have about her passion coming through for the resort's interactions with you.
Oh my gosh. We could do the whole podcast just on this. But, the things that spring to mind for me are, a great example is an event called Wagon Days, which happens over Labor Day weekend here. And this is an event that she literally and her husband Earl have put so much into that's kind of made it what it is. So it's a parade of wagons and are just a real homage to the Western heritage that we have here in Ketchum and Sun Valley. And she insisted on riding in a carriage every year,
Oh,
including this past year.
wow.
So, and physically her body was really failing her over time,
Mm-hmm.
and she was in a wheelchair. Um, but that didn't stop her from doing those types of things. And I have to tell you, riding because I would always ride in the carriage with her,
Mm-hmm.
riding in that carriage through that parade and just seeing the looks on people's faces and then hearing the cheers as we rode that carriage through town during that parade was like, it was unbelievably moving. And just, it's the community expressing such appreciation for everything that she's done to build this place to what it is, for just being there with the people all the time. No task too small. Like she was in it all the time, and they saw that, and over time just really grew to love her for it. And so, getting that time with her was always just such an amazing treat.
Yeah, I want to underscore this point for the listeners. Sun Valley has always been a top American resort, but there was nothing inevitable about it necessarily being staying that way. And if you go back to the 70s when they bought it, it was still all old double chairs, which every ski area was back then. But for a long time, they quickly modernized it with high-speed lifts, and they were the only ski area in Idaho to do that for a very long time until Schweitzer started to build itself up, and now some of the others are as well. It's also one of the least snowy large ski areas in the country, which means they had to invest a tremendous amount in snowmaking. Just talk a little bit about that vision and how they've built the modern Sun Valley into something that is still one of the leading ski resorts in America.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, when you look at the time, which is the late 70s, and it was really just coming off that, kind of historic drought year where there was nothing going on. The season really didn't happen. And they still took that risk to get into a business that they had no experience in at all. But had, spent time cruising through town and were impressed by it, and then the opportunity presented itself and they jumped on it. And it's just, that's a little bit of that legacy of, just going with your gut and taking risks sometime to do something bigger and better. But I think once they made that acquisition, pretty quickly realized what you just said, that the lifts need upgrading and we need snowmaking. And they did those things and really built that up. And then, of course, added the iconic lodges that are still relevant and spectacular to this day. Has all added up to something that's, again, really special, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the last time we spoke on this podcast, Pete, you were very emphatic about the fact that the holdings would be long-term owners. And I've seen you say this in other publications as well, where that was a big decision. That was a big important point for you in your decision to move over here from Vail Resorts. Mrs. Holding was always the figurehead and sort of the public face. So I don't know what the rest of the business looks like. Do you get the sense that the company is still harboring that sentiment where they want to be the long-term stewards of Sun Valley and Snow Basin?
100%. Yeah, it's been stated unequivocally, both prior and since Mrs. Holding's passing, that this is the business that they want to be in. They have such amazing passion for both Sun Valley and Snow Basin and their other properties. This is who they are. And again, the demonstration of that was divesting the oil company a few years ago, where decision could have easily been made to do just the opposite, divest the ski resorts and hold on to the oil company. So, I mean, you won't get a stronger indication of kind of where their heart is than this. And so, and it's been restated recently to me. So I have zero question about where this is going.
All right, so big things ahead. Let's talk about the World Cup here, Pete. Like I said, preparations were going strong when I was there in the first half of March, and the events weren't for a little bit of time yet. So tell us about the World Cup, how you brought it to Sun Valley, and what it took to get Bald Mountain ready for an event of this size.
Yeah, what an undertaking, and we're 2 weeks post now, and I can say it's one of the proudest moments of my career in what our team was just able to pull off. There's a little bit of happenstance and being in the right place at the right time with this. And, when I got here, I quickly realized, what an amazing mountain this was. The ski racing heritage that dates all the way back to the 1930s here, that's so strong, but that really hadn't been a priority for the last 50 years. But certainly it's still felt like it was in the DNA and in the community. And I got that feeling everywhere I went. And so I also, coming into this role, developed a relationship with US Ski and Snowboard CEO, Sophie Goldschmidt, who, was eager to kind of think differently about venues and where events should be, and working with FIS and figuring out, okay, what can be brought to the United States. And so, it was, again, a combination of factors that I talked with my team. We felt like, sure, if there's ever an opportunity to do a World Cup, we'd love to, be considered for it. And, part of what we had to prove was that we could hold national level events. And so we held nationals twice before I got here in 2016 and 2018. And then we did it again for 2 years in 23 and 24, all very successfully. So I think, we showed that we can do stuff like this. Now, taking on a World Cup is a whole different level than US nationals. And taking on World Cup finals is much bigger than just a weekend of World Cup events, which is typically either speed or tech, either men or women. And in this case, it's all of the above. And so you're actually putting on 8 races over that week. Mm-hmm. And the downhill, of course, is the most complicated just due to the length of the course and the demands of the safety and protection and so forth. But all that being said, I got a phone call one day from Sophie back in fall of 2023 saying, we may have an opportunity to do something here, and I need to know pretty quickly if you guys are in. And so we scrambled very quickly, put together, something for our owners to look at and just give an idea of, okay, this is a bit of a risk, but here's what we'd be taking on. And ultimately, they were amazingly supportive and said, let's do it. And that really set us on this journey, that took 16 months or so and led us to pulling off these races in March. Um, so, the real work, in addition to all the planning that was really ongoing from day one, was there was a lot of infrastructure work that needed to happen on the mountain, specifically more for speed than the others, but nonetheless, so things like there are some grading projects that needed to happen in various spots on the mountain, big grading project in the finish area, snowmaking installation in various spots, new timing system installed. So that's running trench and timing wire top to bottom. And then some selective tree clearing to kind of create new paths and segues from one trail to another, to really kind of make for a unique course. So that was a crazy summer. And again, we'll talk about later, but we're building a new lift at Seattle Ridge at the same time. So it's not like we didn't have much going on for the summer, but I feel like, we have put together a really strong mountain team here, and their capabilities are extraordinary. So, while I was a little bit nervous about what we were taking on and not a lot of time to do it, I knew we had the right people to do it. And so we were able to really attack it. And, a combination of us doing some of the work ourselves and outsourcing some of it and just putting all that together. So that just made for a super busy summer, but everything was done. And you get periodic visits from FIS officials who come over from Europe and want to check in and see how things are looking and make sure you're on track. So we managed those as well. And then once the season started, then it's really it's course prep. So there's a lot going on as we get closer to the event. There's all the fine tuning. The finish area is a massive project on its own, the whole base area infrastructure, but a ton of work on the mountain with a lot of snowmaking, a lot of dozing, creating the right surface and the right kind of hill profile for the event so that it's compelling, it's fun, it's safe, all those things. And all this is, again, working with FIS and with a guy named Tom Johnston from the U.S. ski team, who's their technical advisor, who is really, he's kind of the primary architect of the downhill course. He lived here for probably the 45 days, maybe closer to 60 days leading up to the event. And you want to talk about work ethic. You see what some of these people put into this on my team, and then some of the folks that we brought in to help us as well. It's like long days, 7 days a week for many, many weeks. And that's what it takes. So it's pretty extraordinary, the undertaking, but the payoff is unbelievable when you get to see the races happen on your mountain, place that you ski day in and day out. And now the world's best skiers are putting it all on the line there. It's an amazing feeling. And something that I wish everybody could have at some point in their career.
You said there was a little risk there, Pete, when you first decided whether you're going to accept this project or not. What was the risk? Was it just not getting done in time? Was it that it would cost more than you think? Was it that would upset your locals to have the hill blocked off or to have all the extra folks in town? What were the risks, and ultimately, why did you decide you could handle those?
The risks are all the above. So everything you just said. You take it on. It's like, okay, the clock starts ticking right away, and you have a lot to get done and not a lot of time to do it. So there's this nagging feeling of, are we staying on track? That never goes away. We knew we would be compromising at closing some of the most revered, treasured terrain on the mountain for an extended period of time. Now, because it was our first time through it, we didn't know exactly how long that would be. And as with any large snowmaking project, you're at the mercy of the weather, and you have to go when the temperatures are right. And sometimes the forecast doesn't quite play out the way you think it's going to. And So we had all those things. So yeah, there was a chance we were going to alienate some of our most loyal customers. Um, and then the financial risk is massive. It's huge. It's a huge investment to do what we just did with, a handful of revenue streams to try to offset that. So, you go in with a point of view on where you think that can go, but it can swing pretty significantly either way. And so all those things just weigh on you. So ultimately, yeah, we felt like we did everything we could to lay it all out. Um, and the risk was at a level we felt like, okay, it's worst case scenario, not great. Best case scenario, really good, good. Um, and, what we get to do through all of this is just bring Sun Valley back on the international stage where it hasn't been for many years, and a chance to show the world who we are and what we can do. And then I still believe that there's a role for all of us to play in the future of the sport. And part of that for us is, bringing world-class competition to our mountain and our region and our community, and inspiring the next generation of skiers. And there's no doubt that you do that when you host an event like this. There's no doubt. You just look out in the crowd and you see the kids who are starstruck, and you know what that's going to do for them motivation wise for the next 10 years of their racing careers. They're in it and committed.
Take us on the ground here into some of those crowds. I mean, you have Lindsey Vonn there getting her first podium finish in 6 years. You have Michaela Schifrin getting her 101st World Cup victory. All these big time athletes, also a lot of people in town. So, what was the atmosphere like on the hill? What was it like in town? Do you feel like the town managed that influx well, or were there some disruptions that maybe you could learn from in the future?
I think we're in the just getting started on the debrief process right now. So every single piece of this can be improved on in some way. There's always room for improvement, and that will be our goal if we have the opportunity to do this again. But I have to say, what I was blown away by, and I think we all were, was how strong the community rallied for this event and how into it they were. That they were very, very patient with any disruptions. I think the transit plan worked really well, so it wasn't too disruptive to be getting around town. As you know, the races are out in Warm Springs, which is kind of down almost feels like a dead end road in a way, and with a smaller parking lot. So we knew that couldn't handle regular traffic. So right away we said that's going to be closed. The only way to get out there is either to ski over or to take the buses. But the bus system worked really, really well. So I think that was not too much of a disruption for people. And so once word got out around that, then I think people were not fearful of messing up their day by taking or feeling like they're taking a huge risk by going out there and getting stuck out there. They knew they could go out and come back, so they came out. And so we're never going to do Killington numbers or some of the Europe visitation numbers that they get for these. It's just we don't have enough people living even close to here. We're hard to get to for a lot of folks. So that was our assumption all along, that we're not going to see massive crowds here. But we had every bit of what we thought we would have. And that finish area is not a huge finish area either. But what's cool is it was packed, and it's unbelievably loud because of the acoustics and the hillsides on either side. I've been to plenty of pro sporting events, and it had that feel to it. And it just the roar, and the appreciation for a great run. It was awesome. It was electric. It truly was. And of course we had the huge disappointment of having to cancel the downhill on Saturday, which was such a low point after all the preparation. But to have Lindsey podium the next day, completely shifted everybody's attitude completely. I mean, it blew everybody away, and you could see how emotional she was over, achieving something that, I know deep down she believed she could, but I think everybody had doubts that she would ever make it back on the podium again. And for that to happen, and then for it to happen here at Sun Valley it was incredible. And then at the tail end of it, to have Michaela just throw down two dominating slalom runs and just show everybody why she's the best in the world was incredible. And what was amazing about that too was that was a Thursday. So midweek, we're honestly like, well, who knows? Its crowds wouldn't be quite as big as the weekend. Well, it was bigger. It was the biggest we had of any of the races was for the slalom, and the women's slalom in particular. And it was like, wow. And it was so loud. When she did her second run, that place was it was buzzing.
So it sounds like you had a good time. Sounds like you liked it. Sounds like you want it back. A couple of things here. You spent 18 months prepping. I don't really know how these competitive courses work. If you were to bid again, is it pretty much ready to go? I mean, obviously you'd have to make the snow and everything, but you did all that grading, all those, and you have the new lift there. And what do you have to do to bring the World Cup back? Can you ask them, or kind of bid for it, or how does that whole process work? And when is the soonest it could be back?
Yeah, I think the soonest it could be back would be 2027, so 2 years. And we expressed interest prior to this one to say, yeah, well, this is a huge investment for us. It's very helpful for us if we can do more than one event here. And so that was always out there. There will be discussions at the upcoming FIS meetings in May. So actually coming up in a few weeks in Portugal. And we'll be there to say, yeah, we would like to do this again. And that's our point of view right now. As I said before, we know we can get better at this. To our locals who we took away their favorite trail. Yeah, we're going to be better with the snowmaking planning. Now that we've done it once, we know exactly how much snow we need in there. And we can manage the terrain closures in a way that was just more challenging for us the first time around. So will there be impacts? Yeah, there'll be some impacts, but I think they'll be less than they were this time. And everything else is, there's a lot of stuff that has to be redone, but we have the basic blueprint now is set. So it's more, again, about fine tuning and not building from scratch. And that helps tremendously.
So you got the whole pod ready to go. So let's stay in Warm Springs here. Last time you were on the podcast, Sun Valley had just announced these two huge lift upgrades with Challenger and Greyhawk high-speed quads coming out. You put in a high-speed six-pack, which I mentioned in the intro is the tallest in North America, with a mid-station, nice D-line Doppelmayr machine. Adjacent to that, parallel to that, you put a new Flying Squirrel high-speed quad, setting all this up for the listeners here. So that was a few years ago. You've had 2 full seasons almost with these lifts now. How do you like them?
I love them. I love them both. And this is a great example of taking your time with the planning effort and coming up with the smart solution. Mm-hmm. And the way these two lifts work together is so great. We have the redundancy that we didn't have before. We had two lifts, but they were parallel and one ended at halfway up where the current mid station on Challenger is. Mm-hmm. So if we had an issue with Challenger, we were calling the buses in to transport people out of Warm Springs. Now, it didn't happen super often, but it might happen a couple times a year. There's no issue with that anymore because the Flying Squirrel gets you up to the ridge, further down the ridge, but allows you to get up and over to the other side of the mountain. And so on the rare occasion where there's something going on with Challenger, we can direct people over to Flying Squirrel. And that lift still on its own has the capacity to move most of the demand out of there in a pretty reasonable amount of time. So that lift has been great. And it's fun too, because when we're in a bit of a snow cycle and the trees really start to get good, they're some of our best Gladed skiing is off of that lift, kind of immediately adjacent to Peekaboo Run, skiers left of the lift line. Incredible tree skiing. And then over on Scorpion, which is over kind of beyond Lower Flying Squirrel, great skiing as well. So, we'll find on those days, a lot of people will just lap Flying Squirrel because it's just a more efficient way to get to the terrain they want to get to. The Challenger lift is just awesome. It just, with the direct drive, it's quiet. It's faster than a typical high-speed lift. So it's an 8.5-minute ride from bottom to top, and that includes the slowdown at the mid station.
Unreal.
And you want to talk about racking up vertical. I don't think there's anywhere you can do it at the rate you can do it here. And it's been great. And I would say, for that World Cup, I think the FIS officials, the athletes, the coaches, they expect everything to be top notch. And I just think that was a nice feather in our cap to kind of have that lift ready for this first time through on the event. And it's just, these guys were telling us, they'll run downhills in Europe where they have to take 4 different lifts to get from the bottom to the top of the course. And it can take up to an hour. And, you compare that to what we have here and it doesn't get much easier than what we have. So, and the lifts have been great, very reliable, and, way more capacity than we'll need for a long time out of that base area.
How happy are you with Flying Squirrel and Challenger landing in different places? So you're spreading people out more. Is that happening?
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. I would say, on a typical midwinter day when you've got a little bit of a lineup to get the day started for your eager folks, probably 80% of them are at Challenger because they want to go all the way up to the top of the mountain. But again, as the day progresses and people start figuring out where the better skiing is, you can see little shifts happen here and there. So Challenger is still taking most of the traffic, but again, Flying Squirrel is it's a great lift on its own and easy access to some really good skiing there too.
So you've proven this one lift configuration works for a 6-pack over on Challenger, and it doesn't seem like you're missing Greyhawk. Kind of peering into the future here, Pete, do you think the same thing could work when you get around to replacing River Run and Lookout Express? Because you just ski kind of down from River Run to Lookout Express. Seems like you could just let people off and let people keep going to the top. And I realize it kind of bends off at an angle there, but is that something you're considering now that you've seen this work on the other side of the mountain?
I think in that case, I think about it a little differently. I guess I would say, is it possible? Yes, it is possible to do it, but really 2 different user groups. River Run, that's the beginner terrain that we have is Lower River Run. So they're lapping on that lift. I think nice for them to kind of have their own thing. And certainly, if you did do a single lift, you'd want to be able to load and unload at that mid station. And I think that just adds a lot of complexity that you probably don't need there. And then the bend and everything. Again, I think the setup is good the way it is. I think it's just upgrading the equipment is the way forward.
So you chased that Challenger project with a new Seattle Ridge lift last summer. That's a gorgeous machine as well. Talk about that replacement, why the timing was right to upgrade Seattle Ridge right after you just done Flying Squirrel and Challenger.
Yeah, I think, I've said before, but we're committed to replacing all of the older generation high-speed detachable quads on Bald Mountain. And so it's really just kind of figuring out what the sequence is, how it fits into our overall capital priority list. And this was a good year for us to tackle Seattle Ridge. Now, we had made that commitment before we knew we were doing World Cup. So it would have been interesting to, go back in time and switch things around and see if we would have tackled both of those together. But again, our team pulled it off and did a really good job at both. So that one, we chose that one next because it's the busiest lift on the mountain.
Is there?
And so it gets the most traffic. It is really felt like the right place for an upgrade just from a guest experience standpoint. And what's interesting about there is the original lift was built with really the kind of just the cut runs, but there is so much more skiing over there now since the Sunrise expansion happened, and then with additional glading. So you have a lot more, I would say, variety of users who are coming to that lift to access the terrain they want to. So I wouldn't say that's driven a ton of extra demand over there or busyness, but I'm always mindful of let's make sure that the lifts are capable of handling what's happening there and what's going to happen in the future. And so that really drove us to do that one and to, do the modest capacity upgrade on it as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting case study here because it is an isolated lift serving this one pod. There's this phenomenon in highway construction where if you take a 2-lane highway, make it a 3-lane highway, it'll help traffic for a while, but then people change their habits and it fills in. Different thing here, and I don't know if this is true. I'm trying to figure out if this happens with chairlifts as well, if when you put in a higher capacity machine, it draws more skiers. What did you see this year at Seattle Ridge? Because you're going from 2,400 an hour, I believe, to 3,000 skiers an hour. Did it help lift lines? Did you just get more skiers coming over there? What was the dynamic of skier flow around that lift?
Yeah, I think I'll start by saying the functional uphill capacity on all those original high-speed quads is not what is in the spec.
Okay.
So because of, a few different factors, could be the users, could be, our team's recommendation on, how hard we can push those lifts. We typically run them at a slower rope speed.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, in the book or on lift block, it might say 2,400, but it was probably closer to 2,000 an hour before. So it's a significant difference in uphill capacity from what's actually happening on the ground standpoint. That is a line eater, much like Challenger is. You could have a full maze and you could have it completely gone in 5 minutes. And that is something we're known for here is no lift lines. And that's something we're committed to maintaining. So to the other part of your point, which is about what does that do to, congestion on the mountain and just, feeling of traffic or busyness, I don't think it's noticeable. I think that concern came up and it's something that we'll keep an eye on. But again, I feel like once we are into, we've gotten some natural snow and those glades start to open up, we've got a bunch of people are making their way out there. So they're not skiing the groomed runs and they're heading somewhere else. And so it's the combination of all those things, I think, it led to a, very successful launch of that lift. And it is really working. The other thing we did there was we did a very significant grading project at the base because that was a pinch point. There just wasn't enough room to handle, much of a crowd at all. So we peeled a bunch of material off the hillside from up above, closer to the bottom of Mayday Chair, and pushed it down there. And we've created a platform at the bottom of that lift that's probably 3 times the size of what it used to be. So it used to just be a one-sided maze for a quad. Now it's a 2-sided maze for a 6-pack. And there's room to make it even bigger if we ever needed to. So, yeah, feel like that was a good upgrade for us.
Yeah, and I got into those glades, and no one ever talks about glades in the context of Sun Valley, so my expectations were low, but they were great.
Yeah.
Both in the Flying Squirrel section that you mentioned, also off of Seattle Ridge, and then I found some off of Frenchman. So I was really impressed. So next up, I believe, Pete, with that Seattle Ridge approval from the Forest Service, you also got an approval to upgrade the Christmas high-speed quad to a Chandala. I haven't seen an official timeline on this yet. Liftblog lists 2026 as a construction date. Maybe you know something I don't, but talk to us about that Christmas upgrade what you want to do there, and if you do have any sort of timeline you can share.
Sure. So, couple of things. I think, the approval that was added to the approval at the request of the Forest Service. And even though we weren't ready to launch into that project right away, and obviously, we're not doing it this summer, that they are always trying to be as efficient with their resources as they can, which is we totally support. And so if there are adjacent projects that could be, the analysis that needs to be done could be done together better for everybody. So they knew that we had desire to do Christmas at some point. They said, let's throw this in. What we would do is, I'll try to make this as simple as I can, but it's not. What we would like to do is to do Christmas and Lookout Express together. You see how close those top stations of both of those lifts are. Even the current ones share some infrastructure underground. That makes all the sense in the world for us to continue to do that. So it would be really inefficient for us to do one and not to do the other. So the reason Lookout Express was not included in that was the bottom of Lookout Express is in BLM, not Forest Service. And so different approval process. So that is happening right now. So we're working through that process with the Forest Service and the BLM on the approval for Lookout Express. But when we get to that point to actually do something, we would do the two of them together. And our goal would be, we'd like to do it in 26, but that's pending approval, and I can't say that for sure at this point. And but that's certainly our desire. And those will be, those are two significant lifts. That will be as big a project as the one we did at Warm Springs a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean, Lookout Express is that's a 7,600 foot long lift, 2,673 vertical foot rise. That is taller than the vertical rise of most ski areas. Is Chandala still what you're thinking for Christmas? And then what sort of lift are you looking at for Lookout?
Yeah, so yes, Chandala for Christmas. And yeah, the reason for that is for us to have a, opportunity for someone to take the gondola from the bottom of the mountain to the top. And that is beneficial both winter and summer. It's a nice option for people to have, especially people who have less experience on the mountains. It's just more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows us to do that and still, make Christmas a great lift for people who just want to lap that terrain. They can hop on the chair. There's great examples of chondalas that work very well out in the world. And Beaver Creek and Copper are a couple that, that you can look at. So yeah, that would be the plan there. And then Lookout Express would be a high-speed 6-pack similar to Seattle Ridge. So it would be, of that. Direct drive though. We're all in on direct drive, and we love them. And it's just they've been super reliable for us, and the noise factor cannot be overstated. They are just whisper quiet, and it's just for our staff who are working at the top of the lift, it's just a much more pleasant experience. And for guests, to not have to listen to the drone as they, get towards the top of the mountain. It should be a peaceful experience, and you get that with the direct drive.
If you were to do these in 26, that would be 5 new state-of-the-art lifts in 4 years. Sun Valley's been around a long time, and the holdings invest a lot of money into it. And we talked about the high-speed upgrades before. Why now? Is this revenue from Icon and Epic trickling down? Are you just in a different, is it just has to be done now? What's inspiring this to be the time where you make all these huge upgrades?
Yeah, it's not a financial thing at all. These lifts are, 30 years is a rough time frame for a lifespan for a detachable lift. Fixed grips can go much, much longer. There's just less wear and tear on the system. but the detaches is 30. And yeah, you can plus or minus it by 10 years if you want to. Um, but we feel like now is the right time for us to do this. And, again, to add a little bit of a capacity upgrade each time we do it, which is, again, it's a 30-year investment. So we may not need it now, we may not need it in 10 years, but we want to make sure we're prepared for what is coming in 25 or 30 years. So again, it's a commitment that we made, and one that we're going to stick with.
So if you update Christmas and Lookout, that would leave us, as far as the old detaches go, these Yans converted to Doppelmayrs, that would leave us with Frenchmans and River Run. Any imperative to upgrade either of those? And would you be looking at sixes as well for those?
Yeah, so River Run would be next on the priority list. No date kind of earmarked quite yet. Frenchman's would be last. River Run would likely be a 6-pack as well. Frenchman's, you don't need a lot of capacity in there. It's a standalone pod. It doesn't really connect the way that others do.
All right, so that leaves us with Mayday and Lookout. And your fanfic strip lifts, you told me that before. I am as well. You've said that they will always have a purpose on a big Western mountain. These are older lifts. They're from the 70s. They sort of serve a smaller chunk of terrain. So you and I like having that mix. I don't know if your guests are running out of patience with them now that you have these super new, sophisticated Doppelmayrs all over the mountain. So what's your current thinking here, Pete, on Mayday and Lookout, and long term what you'd like to do on that part of Bald Mountain?
Yeah, I mean, Mayday is an awesome lift, and it serves a lot of terrain. My point of view has not shifted at all on the type of lift that would be needed in there. I would replace it with another fixed grip triple. And so we'll run that thing for as long as we feel that it's a good machine to run. And again, those fixed grips can go for a long time. They need good maintenance, which we're committed to doing. But one day, yeah, that will have to get replaced. Lookout is a really interesting lift, and doesn't get a lot of utilization. It's very sporadic, but it does serve a purpose of getting from, the top of the other 3 lifts, Challenger, Lookout Express, Christmas, over to the top of the bowls. So it's a good question. I think we debate this all the time. Like, what's the strategy there? Is it just to replace the chairlift? Is there some kind of surface lift that could go up the ridge there and get you there as well? It's got a few kind of kinks in it. It's not a straight line. So that's not as easy as it sounds, even though that feels like that might be the right answer. So we'll keep wrestling with that one. But yeah, they're two classics in our fleet, that's for sure.
Sounds like those aren't going anywhere anytime soon. All right, let's jump over to Dollar. When I was there, I was on a Ski Idaho media trip, and we were traveling around as a group. And Tony, who manages these Ski Idaho trips, he said he'd never been over to Dollar on a media trip because no one ever asked, but I pushed us to go over there. And everyone really liked it. And I don't think any of us were expecting to. Not that we expected it to not be a cute little thing, but you're skiing Sun Valley, Bald Mountain, in this iconic thing, and you go to this 700 vertical foot ski area or whatever it is, and you just kind of expect it to be this little thing, but it was very charming. I felt that it had some very interesting terrain, the way it was laid out, and it was a very playful mountain. The vibe was very fun there. There's lots of parks. What do you think about Dollar Mountain? It creates that kind of cool atmosphere, or was that just my impression on one day?
No, that is what it's like every day there. It is such a cool vibe over there. It is some of the best beginner terrain you'll find anywhere, and great park. And those are your 2 primary user groups, but they're not in conflict with each other, and they work really well together. And I think, that's part of the magic of that place. Is most ski areas, they may have great beginner terrain, but typically, there's a flow issue, and you've got mixed user groups trying to kind of fit through the same area, conflict, stress. not fun. And we don't have that. Like
Yeah.
it's just chill. And you feel it as soon as you walk out on the snow there. It's like, okay, music's playing, not a ton of people, everything's groomed, it's immaculate there, the preparation of it. You can see, look right up to the top of the mountain. You can scope out all the terrain before you ride, dollar chairlift. And there's more variety than people realize. So even if you're a good skier, you can have some fun over there as well and challenge yourself a little bit. So yeah, I think that one of our challenges as a resort is trying to kind of articulate this message to different folks about what Sun Valley is all about. And it's easy to just default to Baldy, which is a very challenging mountain that hardcore skiers and riders love, but that's too hard for a low intermediate and certainly for a beginner. But we have dollar, but that message doesn't always get out. So that's on us to, kind of keep pushing that. But it's an amazing place to learn to ski or ride. And that is where the bulk of our ski and ride school activity happens there as well.
Is dropping into those little bowls. There's some really interesting lines, this little rock outcroppings, and some kind of cool things there. This isn't really something I noticed. I was just comparing trail maps from the last conversation we had in 2022 to now. I noticed you took out the silver dollar carpet at dollar. Is that something? What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, it wasn't getting used for what it wasn't getting used, period. Like very, very low ridership, kind of a one-off out, out in no man's land. It almost felt like a little bit. And so we decided, we're trying to up our terrain offering for learning and what we're able to provide for our ski and ride school. So we've captured that terrain, it gave us more terrain now without the carpet in the middle of it over there, and have added a bunch of new features this year. Again, to just fun skill development, good for kids, good for beginner adults. We're trying to grow. We have room to do more in that space. And so that's what we focused on this year. And I think you'll see even more of that in coming years.
So what did you do with that carpet? Did you sell it? Did you move it elsewhere?
It's just waiting to find a new home. We'll find a use for it.
Okay. If so it sounds like you want to move it somewhere else within Sun Valley rather than sell it.
Yes.
Okay. All right. What about Elkhorn and Half Dollar, 72 and 78 were when those lifts were built? Again, we talked about these in the past and you said they're fine. Still the case 3 years later?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, half dollar would be an earlier priority. That gets a fair bit of utilization for the park. And so that is one we keep a close eye on. And Elkhorn it's a challenge because it only runs a handful of days a year. It's poor exposure over there, very south facing, doesn't hold snow very well. No snowmaking over there, and would be hard to justify a big investment in snowmaking there versus other places that we could really beef up. So when it's good, it's really good, and we're glad we have it. It opened for, I want to say, probably about a month this year. Didn't open at all last year. We didn't have enough snow. Opened for probably a couple months, at least 2 years ago, in an extraordinary snow year. So jury's still out a little bit. Don't have an answer on that, but you're right. That is an older lift that we'll have to make a decision on at some point.
I was super bummed because it was spinning the day I went and I just missed it. Kroll just put the rope up to get over there. So I think it was 250 or something like that. So, all right, I'll have to come back
for a couple more years.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Icon Pass and Mountain Collective. Last time we spoke, October 2022, Sun Valley and Snow Basin had just joined Icon in that spring, but it was for the 22-23 ski season. After 3 seasons in Epic, of course, you'd been part of Mountain Collective before your tenure at Sun Valley. So you've had 3 full seasons at this point. You're on the passes for next year. talk to us about Icon Pass and Mountain Collective. How do you like them? How are those relationships going so far?
We love them. We are very, very happy with how everything has gone. We feel like we have great partners with both Icon, which is partnering with a company, but they're partners in every sense of the word in terms of how they approach the partnership. And we feel like we have a voice. We have access to data. We can really, I think, do right by our customers and help our business at the same time. And so, and again, it's, what we suspected all along has been true of Icon is just a stronger presence in this Intermountain region, which we're a part of. And so it makes all the sense in the world from a, connecting the dots standpoint, and for skiers and riders who want to hit more than one destination, we're kind of in that mix. And that has worked very, very well for us. Mountain Collective gives us that same exposure. Mountain Collective, very strong in this region. And again, to be able to, hit Sun Valley and Grand Targhee and Jackson and Big Sky, and go down to the Salt Lake areas, pretty compelling. So it feels like the right mix for us. And so we're very happy with how both of those partnerships are going.
When I spoke to you, you were in that transition period between Epic and Icon. And the way you framed it then was, we tried Epic, now we're going to try Icon. We're going to see which one we like. Sounds like you're pretty happy with Icon. Do you think that we could see another pass shuffle in the future, or do you think you're Icon long term?
I feel like we're in a good spot right now. So, in the absence of any big shifts, I would see us kind of staying the course on where we're at right now.
So you're on Icon, and you're on the Icon Pass, the full pass, not the base pass. You were available on the base plus pass. Alterra has made the decision to get rid of that product for the 2025 to 26 ski season. I was just at Taos, and Taos temporarily left Icon Base and jumped on just Base Plus and full. Then they came back, and their profile is a lot like Sun Valley's. They're kind of at the end of the road, and you have to really want to be there, right? It's not like you fly into Denver and you have your choice of 10 places, or Salt Lake. So that was the initial decision. You've stuck with it. Do you think long term that Sun Valley will be only Icon, not Icon Base, and why?
Yeah, I would still see us staying full Icon only. I truly would. I mean, we'll see. Everybody who is on Icon Base has a decision to make this year, or Base Plus has a decision to make this year about, am I going to go up to full Icon, or am I going to go down to Base? And then we'll see kind of how the visitation plays out over the next couple of years. And I think, too early to draw a conclusion on that. I just think, again, we have a great relationship and a great deal of trust between us and the Icon team. And I'm confident if there's anything that's, negatively affecting the business, we'll work out a solution. So, but I think, we definitely want to try to preserve the experience for our own season pass holders as well. And that's why we've said, full Icon only. And, we want to make sure growth is good and important, but not unfettered growth. Like, we really want to preserve the magic of the experience here. And part of how you do that is by, paying close attention to your visits.
Yeah, it's some interesting history there, and that the Icon Base Plus was the product of exactly what you just said, which is trying to manage that experience. And Rusty Gregory on this podcast one time said, Alterra, we didn't want Base Plus. We didn't want to do it. But Aspen and Jackson wanted it, so we did it because we're sort of a collective and we wanted to make everyone happy. It seems like maybe the product had just run its course, because Aspen and Jackson had been on the base, and then suddenly they weren't, and maybe they didn't want to move that fast. This all happened before Sun Valley joined in 2022. This happened in 2020. Curious if Sun Valley had a point of view on Base Plus and getting rid of that product, or if this was more of an Alterra decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think No, we didn't have any particular heartache at all over Base Plus.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think most of our visits are have been full icon for those who are coming. Just it is those are the folks who were fully committed and making trips, and I feel like that is our customer.
So RFID coming next year. Finally, that's great. Does that mean that next time I can leave my pass, my Icon Pass or Mountain Collective in my pocket?
You can. We're jumping into the 21st century finally.
What was the impetus there?
I think it's been on our hit list for many years, and we've prioritized other capital investments and felt like, our guests tell us every year, like, seriously, I have to pull out my pass every time. It's like, yeah, but you get to interact with our super friendly scanners. And but I think, we've known we had to do it, and this feels like the right year for us to do it. So we're happy to move forward on it, and yeah, it'd be a good investment for us.
All right, Pete, let's talk about the Sun Valley Village on the way out the door here. I have one specific question for you, and then I'll let you lay out what you want about it. I read your master plan. The old plans I had seen had a gondola connection from Sun Valley Village to Dollar Mountain over the ridge to Bald Mountain. I don't see that as part of the new plan. To me, that would have been a really crucial element because Sun Valley Village, it's very much built around this concept of pedestrians and creating a sense of place. But the only way you can get there is to drive. So the gondola would have added that to it. Curious why we're not seeing the gondola in this new master plan, and if it's still possibility that could be built or re-enter the master plan at some future point.
Yeah, I mean, this master plan is specifically what's called the special plan area, the 61-acre spa in the village. This is kind of just the broad guiding document to kind of what's going to happen in various places over, say the next 25 plus years. And it's a requirement of the city of Sun Valley's comprehensive plan to have one of these. So that was really at their behest. Okay, we need to put this together, which we did, and we've put a little bit of detail into certain things, but broader, further out in the future concepts like a gondola connection over to River Run. It felt premature to kind of get into that at all. Could it happen? Yeah, possibly. It makes sense for the reasons you described, but it's also, it's a very ambitious undertaking to even contemplate that. So, could it happen again? Yes, potentially. But this was more focused on just what's happening in the village core, and how do we help our owners kind of think about a series of upgrades that could be made over time, without it really committing to anything major at this point.
Why does it make sense to rethink this village rather than Sun Valley is unusual for a destination resort in that you don't have that slope side place to stay. And I'm wondering why not? Why not concentrate your new development over there and maybe move some of that parking underground where you have the space right on the mountain rather than having people have to drive across town to get to the mountains?
Yeah, I think it's not a matter of whether that makes sense to do. It's just what order do you want to do things in? And I think, we believe there's a lot of opportunity to continue to improve what we have in the village here first, and kind of take care of this, and then consider other possibilities down the road. So again, this is the difference between, say, a public company and a family-owned company. The time horizon is completely different. So sure, if if we're bought by private equity, those conversations would ramp up in a hurry, and you would be thinking about those things. But that is not how we think about things in this company. It's, hey, let's make sure we're making smart choices that'll serve us well 50 years from now, 100 years from now. 2-3 generations from now. And it's really fun to be a part of.
All right, Pete, I got a million more questions for you, but I know you got to run. I appreciate the time. We'll have to do it again soon. Next time I'm in Sun Valley, I'll make sure to track you down. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Stuart.
That's Pete Sonntag, Chief Operating Officer and General Manager of Sun Valley, Idaho. Man, that mountain is changing fast and in all the right ways. If you're done with the crowds in Utah and Colorado, put Sun Valley on your list. Just get out of it all. All right, lots more pods on the way with the leaders of Mount Hood Meadows, Arapahoe Basin, Sugarloaf, Blue Mountain, Ontario, Killington, Taos, and many, many more on the way. You will want to subscribe to the Storm Skiing newsletter at stormskiing.com to get those the moment they are live. You can also follow the Storm on X, Instagram, and YouTube at Storm Ski Journal. Until next time, stay well, stay safe. I'm Stuart Winchester, and I'll talk to you again very soon.
The Storm Skiing Podcast is a Quicksilver Films production.